So today, we'll begin Breatharian Beginnings in the chapter called The Value of Health. Ultimately, our health has the value we give it. The light has the value we give it. The breath has the value we give it. Your vibrancy has the value you give it. Often, we don't realize how healthy we are until we get sick. That is the catch-22. And the big paradox. You don't realize how much energy you have until it dips. You don't realize how high you have climbed until you slip. Have you ever felt a really bad sickness? Becoming bedridden and stripped of all your energy. Feeling your vitality vanish right in front of your eyes. Feeling sapped, sluggish, lethargic, and lame. Feeling like your entire plans for the day are ruined while you rest and recover. Even this, we can say, is a blessing. For to be sick is an indication of health. Why, you ask? Because if you were not aware of your sickness, you wouldn't have been that aware of your health to begin with. It is such a cruel irony that we never miss the water till our well runs dry. Say that one more time. We never miss the water till our well runs dry. Sometimes you have things in abundance and you don't realize you have them until they are gone. Until somehow they are taken away from you and you have to find your way without them for a time. The same can be said for our material possessions, for money, for vitality and vigor. Whenever you have fallen ill or at dis-ease, you must sacrifice the day to gain back your life. This is why I love the quote from Lao Tzu, author of the Tao Te Ching. Do the difficult things while they are still easy. Accomplish the great task while it is still small. A journey of 1,000 miles must begin with a single step. We often don't realize the power of prevention. Prevention is much better than the cure, for it is easy to stop a disease in its tracks than to cure one that has already taken place. What do you do when a disease has already settled in, when an illness has already found its home within your vessel? Wouldn't it have been easier to block its entry at the gates? To stand guard like Gandalf and say, "You shall not pass!" Or to be like Osmosis Jones and have to root out the infiltrator? Your health has the value you give it. Only you can truly value it the most. Whenever you feel very unwell or misaligned, you find your health is always worth the time. And at the end of this chapter, we have a quote from one of my good friends, Celeste Rojas. Shout out to Celeste, you the best. She says, I like to use the word transformation instead of healing. And the transformation that I've been experiencing is more presence. The more I detach, the more present I become. And with that presence is a strong awareness of the choices I have in each now moment. I have a choice between the familiar path rooted in fear, chasing comfort, or I have the unfamiliar path rooted in love, becoming comfortable with discomfort. And granted, there is a middle path between those, which could be the sweet spot of equanimity, which I have the choice now that is between those two. and anywhere in between, I get to land anywhere I'd like, based on my level of awareness, which I feel is heightened now that I have detached from certain coping mechanisms that have left me in deep suffering. Celeste Rojas. An aerial something. Reading Hilton Hotima taught me about so many things, but one of the things that I still remember was the subject of the air. There was a passage in his book that said, "It may be affirmed that an aerial something, whatever it may be, essential to life, passes into the blood from the air." Now think about that for a second. An aerial something. Sounds a bit mystical, right? Just think about yourself becoming aware of something that has always been there. An unknown element that permeates our air. They say that all the oxygen and all the molecules that were ever breathed in the world are still here today. That today is the same breath, the same molecules, the same air that was absorbed during the time of Jesus, the Buddha, and all these meditating saints. All these sages and wonderful beings of creation were breathing the same air. The ones we idolize and the ones that were realized, they breathed the same air that we breathe today. So it is a literal fact that you and I are connected. Yes, you heard that right. As you are reading these words, or as you are listening, as you are breathing right now, you and I are connected. Somewhere along your life, you have absorbed the same air and breathed the same consciousness as every human breath. At least once in your lifetime, and perhaps many times, for there is no separation. The air that resides within you has been within us all. So we understand that the air we breathe is also a consciousness. Air contains a substance that builds and sustains the body. It stands to reason that since this breath is so essential, we should learn how to expand our lungs to receive even more. We might even prioritize this over the expansion of our stomach. Our body always has our best interest at heart. The body tirelessly working, the heart continuously beating. Our lungs perpetually breathing without our conscious involvement. Perhaps you've been in nature where you can hear the wind blowing. Hear the sound whistling through the leaves of the trees. This is the very air that contains that substance, that aerial something that is essential to life, that passes into the blood. Some cultures call this chi. Others call this prana. Others just call this life force energy. But if we know one thing, it is essential. And we would not be here without it. Because of this abundant substance, we get to exist. We get to breathe. We get to feed. We get to nourish. We get to replenish, restore, revitalize, and be reborn each day. All through these things that we take in our bodies that are invisible to the naked eye. Who knows why? This energy flows through you and I. Who knows why? This prana permeates the sky. The question is, will you learn how to work with this energy? Learning how to cultivate God's creation. How to merge with this miracle molecule. learning to consciously take in the molecules that have made their way through each incarnation, each human manifestation and demonstration of existence. We cannot see it, yet we agree it. It is there. This is the breath that we all share. And this chapter ends with a quote from Stephanie Suhart. Stephanie says, "Being on this pranic journey just made me realize that we are looking for something that we already actually have. I mean, that we're already sustained by prana, whether we are eating or not. And just doing it more intentionally or just being aware of that really just makes it deeper. I mean, our relationship with prana is deeper. And just knowing that we are energized, that we are fed, that we are nourished, and that we are nurtured by prana, it changes your relationship. Well, it changed my relationship with the world and with everything around me, because everything is prana. So everything is just nourishing you and nourishing me in one way or another. And I think that's the most important discovery that I made. Being on this pranic path, for me, it's just that. It's just realizing that we are doing this every day, that what we're doing every day has as much more meaning and much more important meaning, has much more important sense, and is much more important than we suspected. And that is so beautiful. Stephanie Suhat. The prana all around you. Hey. The prana is all around me. The prana is within me. This was a mantra that I used over and over and over again when I started this journey. The prana is within me. The prana is around me. As I was getting myself and my mind adjusted to the fact that energy was always available, that I actually lived in a sea of chi, that there was nourishment as well as moisture in the air, and if I was aware, I could feel what was there. I could thrive and even get high on this energy vibe. It would help me soar. It would keep me alive. During my time in downtown Los Angeles, I saw a clear separation in society. I witnessed the wealthy and the not so wealthy, the abundance mindset and the poverty mindset. There were people on Skid Row and living in tents in the street. You would see many of them mumbling to themselves, scratching themselves, itching themselves, often abusing themselves. I'd see people arguing and fighting and begging for money and food. Then you would notice nearby a complete contrast. People in the same city living out lives of luxury, walking in and out of different restaurants, hotels, and bars, seemingly oblivious to any other realities. I recall going to the main movie theater downtown. This was when I was going dry for many days at a time. When I went inside, I remember smelling the popcorn and all the things that I used to partake. Remembering that I used to stand in line waiting for a soda and a large popcorn lathered with butter. This time, I didn't have to stand in line. I didn't have to wait, tapping my foot on the ground impatiently like the others. I just walked into the movie. And as I sat in my seat, I soaked in more of my surroundings. I absorbed more of the atmosphere. I noticed the people around me, the sounds, the smells, the laughter, the emotion. I could feel and sense everything at such a heightened level. It was completely surreal. Even though I'd gone to the cinema hundreds of times before, this was a strikingly different experience. As I sat in front of that big screen, I knew that the energy was readily available. I knew I wouldn't need any snacks because I had a constant stream of prana. The spiritual buffet that would keep me sustained for hours on end. As I sat in my chair, I put my arms in the air and tapped into this pure light. I would drink in the nourishment around me. I would simply feel, and this would be my meal. It didn't matter if anyone else thought I was crazy. I knew it was real. I knew in that moment I was being fed just like they were being fed. They were eating popcorn while I was having prana. It was one of the best feelings ever to have no more doubts, to know that you are provided for, to know you never have to worry about hunger again. At the end of the chapter, we have a quote by one of my friends, Alice Heath. Shout out to Alice, much love from the UK. Alice says, "Pranic living really is unique to you. No one can define it for you. It moves with your breath, with the beat of your heart. It becomes what you need it to be, when you need it to be it. Your energy will be through the roof in a grounded, centered way. Of course, time will slow and you'll be the master of it. The self-observer, self-realizer, continually rebirthing in beauty and peace and in bliss. It's union, it's sanctity. Pranic living is love. Love for all, for the earth, but especially love, true love for self." Alice Heath. Becoming rare. Take a moment and visualize a painting. Perhaps a famous one hanging inside of a museum, a real rare work of art. Or you could think about a collectible baseball card, or picture a rare diamond, or ancient artifact. If something is rare, how much is it worth? How is it viewed in the public eye? Is it usually perceived as being worth more? Or is it viewed as worth less? Just answer yourself that question. Now, when someone in society has adopted rare tendencies, when someone exhibits rare habits and has set rare standards for themselves, would you consider this a rare individual? Now, this is not to say that inherently your value is superior or inferior to anybody else. We all have worthiness. We are all worthy. But it's just to put it in perspective, that in the midst of the collective, it pays to be very selective with where your energy goes and how your energy flows. When you are doing something that the majority of people are not doing, you stick out like a sore thumb. Picture this. I have friends and family members that would not go one day without eating. Not even a day. Perhaps you do as well. To not even go one day out of the year without being in constant digestion mode. To have your intestines working overtime with no pay. This is normal for the majority. I know this because it was my normal as well. It was normal for me to have the standard 3 meals a day, plus snacks in between, chips in between, Pop-Tarts in between, candy bars in between, and so on. Even the midnight snacks did not concern me growing up. How can we even be surprised with all sorts of illnesses, ailments, and disease that pop up out of the blue? It is the value that we have placed upon ourselves that make the difference. It is the value that we place upon ourselves that make us rare. When you love your body loves you back. You realize that when things don't add up, it's time to subtract. You know when it might be time to take a step back. Time to chill out. Maybe even time to relax. But you don't need a chill pill, and you don't need medication. Sometimes all you really need is a little meditation to break up all the blockages and raise your vibration. When you embrace the totality of all these modalities, you become rare. You become rare because you actually care. You care enough about yourself and your health to do something that is not being done by everyone else. You find the value is in your vessel, the only house you really have. You put your peace over the latest popularity. That is what we mean by becoming a rarity. At the end of this chapter, my brother Dennis, my friend, you might know him as I Create Lines, he has a quote here. And Dennis says, you become so untethered to things. You become so unchained, you know. It's like feeling you have nothing in common with the rest of humanity. Like there is this 70% of connection that just goes away. And then I say to myself, but all of these people have a sense of togetherness when they eat. But then I force myself to sit down and see what they're enjoying. This connection that they're enjoying. And that's not connection, man. That's actually not connection. They're only connected to their own plates. And they're talking all the time, or all at the same time, not listening to each other. And is that really connection? Is that what I miss? So maybe this is just a transition phase between that world and this world, where I connect with people who understand, and it's more rare, and it's more quality over quantity. And of course, it's going to be based more on conversation than consumption, because that's the point. Dennis, I Create Lines. How far we've come. Did I ever fear putting my body in danger? I had the advantage of full faith and full belief when I first started. I didn't really doubt because I knew that there were so many people who had done this before me. They had paved the way for me to have this newfound perception. In that first retreat with Elitam and Athena, we were all just so immersed in the energy of surrender. It was a new belief and conviction that we were creating. Because you're coming out of the conviction that you will die without food. I think the only time I really felt like this could be dangerous was while I was browsing inside of an art gallery. I had gone so long in my natural state that I felt like I was floating. It was accepted within my body as a natural way of being. I was in this new space and not really realizing how far I had gone. So when there was a dip in my energy, it was a little abrupt. While I was standing around all these people at the art gallery, my energy plummeted. There was no warning that I can remember. Or perhaps I had been lost in the clouds. My only logical solution was to do a standing meditation. After all, meditation had gotten me here. Perhaps meditation could keep me here as well. So I started doing Qigong, right in the middle of the crowd of onlookers. I didn't care that they were probably giving me very strange looks. Soon, my energy started to pick up. I was back in the clear, back in my new self again. That was the only real fearful moment that I can recall, that my body's nourishment was now coming from Qigong. It was like I had programmed myself day after day. Qigong, Qigong, Qigong. So when I needed energy or when I felt low, I had to do Qigong. That was the scary part. I said to myself, okay, if I don't do this energy work, it might get dangerous. It is paramount that I keep doing this. You know, I was doing this to get to this state. Now I may have to do this to stay in this state. Our bodies can adapt to anything. I look back on the stuff that I used to eat, the amount that I used to eat. I don't know how I did it. But the longer I started to fast, I got to a point where that quantity became unacceptable. It is insane to even think about going back to that level of quantity. I can see now how that could be scary for some people. When I tried to eat solid food again, it felt like something had gotten caught or lodged in my body. Like something was just stuck in my chest, and I couldn't go back. That was another scary part. I started to understand what some of my teachers were trying to tell me. Be careful what you wish for. Human beings have stretched themselves beyond the threshold. We do not realize the true damage we have done and continue to do to our bodies. So when you revert back to a natural state, when the body learns how to live on less, it might be strange because you're used to having more. The physical cravings no longer come to you, but the anxiety of being out of the social loop can be tough. The feeling that you are even more of an outsider, that's when it can feel lonely. You're not used to yourself in that way if you shy away from the solitude. You're thinking to yourself, is it always going to be like this? Am I ever going to be full again? Am I ever going to feel hungry again? Am I ever going to feel normal again? The answer is yes, if that is your normal. You can go back if you choose. It just takes another form of adjustment. Yet we often don't realize how far we've come until we decide to turn around and go back. Keeping the flame lit. During the time of my first Pranic retreat, I went into this state where I felt impenetrable. I can only describe it as though I felt impervious to the cold, like Johnny Storm from the Fantastic Four. If you've heard of that series, my body said, "Flame on!" in such a way that I felt super stuffy indoors. I had to get out into nature. It was a craving, a yearning. During this season in Sherman Oaks, California, it was freezing outside. I still had to get outside. A deep need for the open air and freshness of a natural environment. Once I got out in the cold, it was exhilarating. I remember walking the streets and feeling superhuman. I didn't have a huge jacket or overcoat, though the weather seemed to demand it. I asked myself, how am I not cold? How am I not freezing? This is amazing. I couldn't understand what was going on with my body, but it just felt otherworldly. More than that, I felt on top of the world. I think that was another upgrade to the Pranic engine. This was a different kind of ability. Being more with liquids now, I don't feel quite like that these days. There are times where I feel colder and have to bundle up. In terms of circulation, exercise has been a godsend for me. just the power of exercise alone. My family would always ask me, why are you walking out there in this heat? How do you do it? You don't even eat. Ellie Tom once did a talk about keeping the fire going within you. If you can imagine food and water being something that would douse the flame or extinguish the fire inside, when you don't put earth or water on top of the fire, it can stay lit. You can even fan the flames with air or breath work. Using this analogy, a person can understand that the internal fire is much more alive. It is allowed to thrive when we don't intentionally lower the vibe. Keep your flames high, my friend. The victimization vibration. I recently had a conversation with a good friend of mine that was very eye-opening. He told me that he had done quite a bit of work on himself. Fasting, liquid diet, parasite and plaque removal were among these things. He was feeling clean and clear for the first time in decades. At the time, he was 50 years of age and told me he hadn't felt this young, this vibrant, and this energetic for so long. He showed me his before and after picture of back in the day. You almost wouldn't believe it was possible. They were like two different people. They don't even look like the same person. But he said, Jerome, this was me. I don't even know how close I was, man. High blood pressure, diabetes, body aches and pains. But there were things that lingered, things like emotions, judgment, and harsh criticisms that remained within. Things he didn't realize that were still there. He told me, man, I've always been the black sheep in the family. The family always looked at me like the odd one. The odd one, the one that just couldn't get it right. And now, even more so, because of the changes I made, they feel like it's normal to do what they do, to eat what they eat. He told me his sister had come by his RV the other day and was chastising him very badly, scolding him for the new habits he had adopted. She told him they were the practices of the devil, that Tai Chi, Qigong, and meditation were of the devil. She called him a worshiper of Satan. I could feel the emotion in his voice. He said, man, she called me Satan, man. Said I had it all wrong just because I meditated and I practiced Qigong. He told me that once his family member had departed, she had left him a piece of chicken from KFC or Popeyes. He said he was feeling so low after his sister left and so energy drained that he was actually hungry. I just had that piece of chicken, he said. After that one piece of chicken, man, I was down for like 2 or 3 days. Felt like there was a rock in my body that I had to get out. But I couldn't get it out. I was bloated. I felt nauseous. I couldn't even talk to you. I didn't even want to be around you. I didn't even want to call you because I felt so bad. I told him I would never have judged him for that. After all I had been through, there is no one I could judge as harshly as I have judged myself. He told me he felt so ashamed of himself. I resonated with that feeling. I proceeded to ask him why he felt the temptation to eat the chicken. It wasn't even the temptation, he said. It was the frustration. When she called me Satan, when she called me the devil, I just felt so low. Then after that, I felt empty. Then after that, I felt hungry. There was nowhere else to go. Then I saw the chicken, and I just ate the chicken. If it wasn't for her, my sister, I wouldn't have eaten the chicken. I told him that when we blame others for the choices we make, we don't realize what is at stake. We don't see the prison this victimhood can create. Because when you blame someone else for something you do, you give them your power and feel victimized too. Take this lesson from my friend: to always be wary of placing the blame on someone else when you do something damaging for your physical health. It creates a cycle of guilt and shame that is hard to break. I told him, keep your head up, man. It's all right. Your body knows what to do. It might just take a little longer, but your body will balance. You'll be right back. You're like a rubber band. You'll snap right back. He said, I know, man. I know. I said, you can do anything, man. You a champion. This can't keep you down. That chicken can't keep you down. It can't hold you down forever, right? He said, I know, man. I know. Pranic perspectives. Our only limitation is our imagination. It really sounds cliche, but it blew my mind once I found it to be true. I witnessed certain things to let me know that the way that I was living was actually a choice. A choice that I was choosing in every moment. It made me feel that eating was just an acquired habit, and that if I wanted, I could drop it. I had just done it for so long that I thought that was the only way that I could live. I went out on a limb and trusted. I said to the universe, if this is true, please show me. Once you witness certain things, you cannot go back. And even if you do go back, deep down, you know you don't have to. You know that it's all just an experience. You know that none of it is necessary. Just that freedom of choice is everything. I think one of the saddest things is not realizing how much power you actually have. Not realizing how much freedom you actually have. I still fall into distractions here and there. We all do. But if everything is a distortion, if everything is an illusion, why not pick the one that serves you? Why not pick the reality that you wish to live? Become fascinated with the reality that speaks to you the most. I'm not saying that everyone who proclaims to live this lifestyle is what we think they are, or that everyone who talks about being Breatharian is how we believe them to be. Everyone has their own motivations, of course, but the possibility remains. It is up to the individual, how far you want to go and how much you open up to life. Because life is saying, I'm here for you whenever you're ready. People talk about relationships on the pranic journey. Do they just fall away? Do you no longer have any attachments there either? The answer is yes and no. I had the luxury of spending some time with someone very close to me. She lives completely different from society. She doesn't preach to her family. She doesn't tell them what they should or should not do. Even though her name stands for the prophetess. She feels everyone has a right to their own perception. This live and let live philosophy is a big one for family dynamics, especially when it comes to living differently around loved ones. Some people show their love in various ways. There's an acronym for the word love: letting others voluntarily evolve. Like one of my friends told me, the only way that we can be free is for you to be you and for me to be me. You become the perfect embodiment of that freedom when you're on this journey. You feel a lot freer in many ways. We're not used to choosing the body, but we are used to abusing the body. Many of us find ourselves constantly meditating about our next meal. We're having breakfast, thinking about lunch. We're having lunch, thinking about dinner. I had to have empathy and compassion for people who were not living like I was living. I realized that there was certainly going to be a backlash if I tried to preach to them or teach to them. I learned to let myself be an embodiment of what is possible. This came through observation as well. Learning from people like Nabiha let me know it is okay to not be like the majority. In fact, it is more than okay. But constantly criticizing them for their habits is not okay. It's also counterproductive. People will come around eventually if they feel so inspired. They'll ask you questions and inquire about your lifestyle. And once they do, just be open and transparent. That's who Nabiha is. An open book for people to read and be empowered. Here are a few things I learned from the prophetess about the process of detaching from food. Firstly, fasting should not be a burden. Fasting feels like a chore when we view it as something we have to do. Instead of focusing on what you cannot eat, try focusing or shifting your focus to what you want to do. How you want to spend your day, where you want your energy to go. By creating a plan for your day and setting goals, you will naturally become less preoccupied with thoughts of food. Remember, eating is a learned habit. So get into the habit of creating your days with purpose and intention. By doing this, fasting will become effortless and you won't even think about food. Now, I just want to pause just for a moment to talk about that little word, habit. One of my mentors was telling me about habit and why habits can sometimes be so challenging to break. They said, Jerome, she was like, think about the word habit. If you take just the word habit, right? If you take away the H in habit, a bit remains, right? You take the A away from habit, bit remains. Then you take the B away from habit, still it remains, right? So we gotta have compassion, we gotta have kindness, because when we have ingrained habits, it can be tough to untether, to untangle, to deprogram, to reprogram, and replace habits. Because we don't really erase habits, we replace habits. Second of all, many of us were taught that food is an essential part of our survival. This is because the idea that we need food to survive is simply that, an idea. Instead of thinking of food as a need, try reframing it as something you are simply entertaining. Just like how we entertain ourselves with movies or books, we can entertain ourselves with food. By entertaining, rather than consuming, you can mentally remove yourself from the unhealthy attachments to food. Next time you reach for that slice of bread or those box of cookies, remind yourself that you are simply entertaining your taste buds and not fulfilling a vital need. The third lesson is that energy is abundant. It is everywhere around you, waiting to be harnessed. Your body is a master at extracting and utilizing this energy to support its functions. But what happens if there is no more food on the planet? The good news is you don't have to rely solely on food for energy. Nature, the air you breathe, the sun that shines down upon you, they all contain energy that you can tap into. Nabiha would often proclaim, "This is the real sun," as we soaked in the rays during our nature walks. You can also generate energy through movement, exercise, and meditation. Her philosophy is always that she doesn't need to find energy, but she creates her own. With the knowledge and awareness of your body's abilities, you can learn to create your own energy without the need for external sources. Many people have misconceptions about the pranic lifestyle. They think that it means forcing yourself to stay away from food, but that could not be further from the truth. Pranic living is more about training your mind to know that you don't need food to survive. It's about understanding that you can create energy from other sources. This doesn't mean depriving yourself. It is about tapping into our innate abilities to sustain ourselves. Some may worry that they will die if they fast even for a few days. But it's about a feeling state and an inner knowing that we can create our own energy. Food is not a main source, or not our main source of sustenance. By embracing our new mindset, you can break free from the limitations of relying solely on food for survival. Now, for a harsh reality. For so many people, food is a straight-up addiction. Like I said previously, it was for me as well for decades. But Nabiha taught me that the addiction is not in the food itself, but in the mind of the individual who cannot stop eating. Similarly to an alcoholic who cannot stop drinking. So the fourth lesson is to take some time to analyze your inner feelings when it comes to food. How much do you consume on a daily basis? While it may fill your stomach, it cannot fill emotional emptiness. It may bring up temporary happiness to your taste buds, but not lasting joy. And it may distract you from pain, but it cannot take your pain away. Ask yourself genuinely, why do I feel the need to eat? Why do I need this for nutrition? Why do I feel weak if I don't eat? Why must I keep putting things in my mouth for no reason? When I finally gave myself time to meditate on these questions, my whole life changed. Many times, I found myself turning to food when I was feeling down or seeking pleasure. It was one of the sensations that made me feel alive. But it was more like I was feeding death rather than life. Another thing Nabiha pointed out to me was the idea of the perfect diet. Have you found yourself constantly shifting from one diet to another, always searching for the perfect one? I've been there too. It's like a never-ending cycle. We jump from vegetarian to vegan and even raw vegan, all in the name of finding the one without flaws. But here's the thing. even when we move to healthier options, we may still be over-consuming. That is because our mind is telling us that we need food. Whether it's fruits or veggies, the question we should be asking is, why do we feel the need to constantly consume? Now I know what you're thinking, but nature is giving us the fruit, right? Nature is yielding the vegetation, right? What's wrong with eating fruit all the time? What's wrong with eating veggies all the time? Let's talk about our relationship with nature. When you think about it, why do we say with nature? We are nature, are we not? Just as the apple grows on a tree, so too do we. The apple is a part of nature, just as much as you and I. So when we think we were born to consume, the question is, why? Nabiha made me question the things that we do as human beings, simply because we can. Just because the orange grows on a tree doesn't mean we have to eat it. It doesn't mean that when we eat it, we will somehow be completed. We don't have to consume everything simply because it is there. It is just nature doing its thing. We were born to exist and not just to consume. So ask yourself how you can learn to flow with nature and appreciate it for what it is. When you see a flower, do you have to pluck it for it to be special? Or can you just let it exist, just as it is? As we take in the beauty of nature, we see the beauty of ourselves, the magic of life as it is. When you see there is no separation, just the thought will raise your vibration. Nabiha also gave me a wonderful analogy that really sticks. Just picture your body as a car. If you constantly put the wrong fuel into it, how long do you think it will last? The same goes for our bodies. We need to give them a break from continuously overloading them with food. Not just unhealthy food, but food in general. This puts unnecessary strain on our bodies, just like putting diesel fuel into a car that doesn't take it. Somehow, I don't think anybody, here's a quote. This is a quote by Nabiha herself. She said, "Somehow, I don't think anybody is supposed to eat solids. I think we just tolerate that. We taught our body how to tolerate this solid, heavy stuff, and it keeps on tolerating. It's like, putting the wrong gas in a car all the time. Just because the car is still running doesn't mean it's the right fuel, right? So I think the majority of us are just tolerating all of these foods. But to me, it feels like the food is an abuse towards ourselves." Prophetess Nabiha. That's where this pranic lifestyle is a great solution to the inner pollution. We start treating our bodies like the valuable vehicles they are. Lastly, and this is a big one, many people often wonder, how can I become a breatharian? I pondered the same question when I heard about it years ago. But what we fail to realize is that this question is based on a fallacy. You see, being a breatharian is not an achievement or something you become. It is simply a realization of what you already are. You are already a breatharian, living and breathing. Your very existence depends on your breath, though you may not know it or treasure it as much as food and water. The concept of being self-sustained and nourished by prana is not reserved for a select few individuals. It is your birthright. The pranic journey is less about learning, but rather unlearning. It's about letting go of all the things that hold you back from this awareness. So remember, if you are breathing, you are already a breatharian. All it takes is to let go and embrace it. Spending time with Nabiha is like an energetic attunement. Observing her movements within the matrix is a treat in itself. We once spent 7 days together, and she sipped water the whole time. She probably had 2 jugs of distilled water that lasted her the whole week. You have so much more time and space with someone like that. You can talk for hours and be fed through conversation. You can walk for hours and feel peace in their presence. You can truly be seen, be felt, and be heard. That kind of relationship is one that I prefer. At the time of this writing, Nabiha and I now have our own podcast. We created it to inspire people on their pranic journey and for people who enjoy hearing different points of view. The podcast is called Pranic Perspectives and is currently available on Spotify as well as Apple Podcast for your listening pleasure. We trust you enjoy the content that we have for you there. Stay inspired, stay energized, stay embodied, and stay encouraged. And the final chapter is a short one. It's simply called Enjoy the Journey. It starts off with a quote by one of my mentors, Raki Chari. Raki says, I said, 1 year I'll do without any solid food. And then once 1 year went by, I'm like, life is so good, why don't I do a second year? And now there is no looking back. Raki Chari. There are so many things that I could say about this journey that has completely transformed my life, that has allowed me to meet so many amazing people, that has gifted me with once-in-a-lifetime encounters. It has allowed me to travel the world and not worry about reading labels, to not worry about so many means of survival, to not carry so much on my back, to not be so burdened by the overabundance of information, to allow myself to surrender to the stream of consciousness flowing at all times, to be fulfilled through the acts of giving and service, to feel the passion of creation and the joy that it brings, to feel purposeful in the impact on the lives of others. That is one thing that has remained throughout: joy. The fear has gone, but the joy remains. If there is one thing I remember hearing Elitam tell us repeatedly, it was to enjoy the journey. No matter the trials and tribulations, enjoy the journey. In the midst of struggles, the ups and downs, the sit-downs and the setbacks, enjoy the journey. Because what is the journey without it? What is the point of all these practices if you don't have peace? What is the point of all of the sessions if you're still constantly stressed? Remember to stay blessed, and above all, just do your best. Stay true to yourself and let time be the test. Wishing you much love, peace, prosperity, and contentment. Jerome. So much love, my friend. Thank you so much for listening. And that's it. That's it. We just finished the book as we've been taking a look during these pranic readings, as we've been proceeding, these different information, different vibration that we receive in the nation from the ages in the pranic pages. So thank you so much for being. Thank you so much for seeing with a feeling so freeing. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. Keep the grateful, thankful spirit And may the rest of your life be the best of your life. My friend, this has been Jerome Shaw. For all things Pranic living, check out the website that we have for you. It's called patreon.com/pranicpath, with multiple audios, tons of videos, tons of books, reading content, visual and auditory listening for your pleasure. Much love. It is always a treasure. Thank you for your support. Thank you for everyone who's been grabbing the books. And we'll see you again. Once again, that website is patreon.com/pranicpath. Stay in tune. We'll see you soon.